Hi, good afternoon. Welcome into Our Ventura. I'm your host. My name is Dave Elliott, and today I'm going to be chatting with a very nice guy who's also a tremendous holistic and natural medicine doctor, whose name is Fred Siciliano. Fred?
Hi, good morning.
And we've known each other a while, so we can't hide anything from the audience, but there's a lot of things that I've talked to Fred about in the last few days that we wanted to cover, in so much as we originally had filmed a show, but never got aired. So today, for the benefit of this, we want to talk over some things about your life, because one of the main things that you're doing for the community is helping people get well, going through wellness and through the natural state, as opposed to what we know as Western medicine. And so Fred is titled an OMD LAMHRH. And those are a lot of letters, but the main thing, Fred, is that it stands for the fact that you're a doctor of Oriental medicine, you're a licensed acupuncturist,
Right.
You're a registered herbalist,
Yes.
You also practice acupressure and herbal medicine, and main thing about it is you do holistic health assessment. And let me start by asking some questions, as we have talked before. You would like to clarify this for our audience as to what all these things mean.
Well, the umbrella degree is Doctor of Oriental Medicine, which really relates to several different fields within Oriental medicine. So acupuncturists, for example, they don't just do acupuncture, but they're trained in other fields that are part of Oriental medicine. So that could be acupressure, herbal medicine, nutrition, even exercise and Tai Chi as part of Oriental medicine. A lot of people don't realize that it's sort of an umbrella. The licensed acupuncturist is like an umbrella license. So at that time, I got an advanced degree in Oriental medicine, a Doctor of Oriental Medicine degree. I also studied with a medical herbalist who was Russian-American, had actually lived in Russia for a number of years and collected herbal formulas in Russia and in China, was in the United States, and I trained under him for my herbal medicine background.
So he was your mentor?
He was my mentor in herbal medicine, yes.
Right. And you explained, too, I'm not going to disrupt your thoughts,
Sure.
But because we are friends, you kind of know how I come into this. What you've explained to me before, we had a lunch and stuff, that you started before 81, somewhere around about, what, 1970?
Well, actually, 1970, I went to the California Institute of the Arts to study Tai Chi and world music.
Uh-huh.
And
But she's a fantastic musician, folks. Go ahead.
And so the Tai Chi, of course, is what got me more interested in Oriental medicine. So that was from 73 to 75. I actually continued studying Tai Chi till 76. At that time, I started to look into studying acupuncture and natural healing techniques. And so I lived at a Buddhist meditation center in Los Angeles.
Wow, a Buddhist meditation center.
Yeah, for 2 years.
You brought that up at lunch. I was fascinated over that.
And I always refer to it as I turned my life around 180 degrees. You know, I had sort of a choice of a conventional life, and I realized that this was my path. And so I studied meditation there, but also that's where I met some of my first teachers in natural healing. I met a Vietnamese Buddhist medical doctor who had studied herbology in France, and he taught us there. And also I met my first acupuncture teacher who was from Japan, Tia Rocky, and I studied with him for 2 years actually, and was starting to do a little work in his clinic. But at that point, the school program, this was in 1979, the official certified school program by the state of California was started in Los Angeles at Samra University, and I went there for formal training.
And then you also had an office, as we talked at that lunch, in Santa Monica.
That's right. After I got my license in '81, I first was working out of my apartment in Hollywood, and then I got an office in Santa Monica.
So you were doing even the foods then as well, but you were doing it within
nutrition and what I actually, one of the ways I worked myself through school was doing acupressure treatments and microbiotic food counseling. And so I taught a lot of classes at the Los Angeles City College, the public branch, the adult education branch. And so I met a lot of people, and I introduced people into all of this. It was in the late 70s, early 80s. Mm-hmm. And that was one of the ways I got myself through school.
And you also, and he truly is a fantastic musician, but you studied world music.
Yes.
And you learned to play several instruments very proficiently, and one of them is an instrument of India.
Yes, it's called...
And if I remember right, you shared with me, too, that you had met, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, Ravi Shankar. People know that name.
Yes, yeah. I actually met him a number of times because one of his very important disciples was my teacher. And his name was Amya Das Gupta, and he was very much behind the scenes, but he was a very beautiful man. Whenever you sat in front of him, you could always feel this sense of inner peace just emanating from him. Mm-hmm. And he would compose compositions on the spot for his students. Every time you would sit down, he would just compose something, and one of the skills in that kind of music is that you need to be able to write it down or catch it, right on the spot. And so he was a disciple of Ravi Shankar, and I did have quite a bit of contact with him in the late 70s and early 80s.
And it has something to do, your background as a youngster, when you were being raised, affects, we all know this, that as you are growing up, everybody goes through it, you get programmed to a certain degree, and you didn't follow the footsteps of what you really were going to be considered. You followed what was in your heart and what was your desires. And that's what you're doing now here in Ventura. So your goal really is to bring wellness to Ventura County, within Ventura itself, the city, because that's where your practice is at. And what I know of you, being that what you do, you're actually making tests for people that you also ask them to take a blood test so you know what their blood type is, because that has to do with it. And we get into the music for a second because that ties in. Could you explain that to the audience? That's fascinating.
About how the music
music and having a belief in what you have, and being cured, tie in?
Well, I think it's hard to define, but music seems to be very nurturing, particularly when it's used to heal the spirit or heal the psychological aspect, as opposed to using it for only for enjoyment, but looking at it from another perspective. And I realized that my path in music was part of my way of healing myself. And also I realized that, when you're a musician, when you perform, you get attention from the audience, but also the type of music that I play is improvisational, and you're also sort of listening to the audience and trying to tune in to what the audience needs to feel and what they need to hear. And I think that's sort of the same aspect in medicine. It's like you're trying to see, how does the patient need to get better? What do they need to feel to be able to heal? What is it that they need to be able to heal? So there's sort of an attunement that's common to both aspects.
I found it fascinating because our friendship has gotten pretty deep in a quick time. In that, I mentioned to you at that lunch that I had met an eye doctor who plays the trumpet. He's a musician. And it's not an uncommon thing that musicians and medicine mix, the medicine realm and doctors. And I brought that up to you, and you found that pretty entrancing.
Yeah, it is interesting, and I wonder whether, when you're a doctor, the patient is giving you attention. In some ways, that's a kind of validation that's very similar to when you're playing, and you're also getting validation, from the audience.
And you did this in college. Did you or did you not use that aspect of your abilities that you
when I was in college at that time, in late high school and college, right? Stockton, California, at University of Pacific, I actually taught myself to play 12-string guitar, and I used to play country blues and some
and
folk.
You had some favorite artists in a sense from that.
Sleepy John Estes, remember his song called "Floatin' Bridge." Floatin'
Bridge.
I never will forget that Floatin' Bridge. 10 gallons of muddy water I did drink. My mother was screaming and crying. She said, "Lord, Lord, please save my child." This is an old blues song. I used to, sing these kinds of songs. And but when I really came in touch with Asian music and Indian music in particular, also Chinese music, then I realized that I wanted to expand and explore, this expression, further. And I haven't really, done that as much with the blues. as much as I have with the
And
Asian music.
one song you mentioned to me at lunch was done by Bob Dylan. And can you relate that one?
Spanish Harlem Incident. I'm not sure if he wrote it, and it's about probably a pretty tempestuous relationship in Harlem. Mm-hmm. I don't quite remember the words to it, but I would often open up a set with this.
And your sets were roughly
45,
5 to 10 songs.
Yeah, probably about 45 minutes.
And these were in coffee houses. I mean, today, ladies and gentlemen, we actually talk about
right.
Starbucks and all those, but this was really the coffee houses that brought up a lot of well-known musicians, including Dylan. They spent time in coffee houses.
Yeah. But I was in Stockton. If I had been in Berkeley, who knows? I may not be here right now, because that was, in Berkeley was a place where a lot of people. But, I transitioned more into world music, and there was a point where I just didn't really play guitar that much anymore.
You were explaining to me the differences, and I'd like you to kind of impart that to the audience as much as you can, as to the world music thing and the type of instrument that you have from India that you play.
Yeah, I play an instrument called the sarod, and it's actually somewhat related to the violin. It is fretless like a violin, but it's plucked. It's not bowed. It's plucked. It has a, like I said, it's fretless fingerboard that's about this long, sort of looks like a cello board, but it has a skin like a banjo, and so it sounds like a cross between a pedal steel guitar and a banjo. So it really has a very, strong sound. It's not like a sitar. A lot of people associate any music with sort of being tinty, but the sarod has a very dynamic sound, and it's very strong. And the music is based on what's called raga, and raga is really, each raga creates a kind of a state of consciousness or a particular feeling. And it's, you have to follow a certain scale, but also a kind of a certain type of scale movement, and then there may be certain ornaments that characterize that. And if you stick within that, you can actually improvise as much as you want, as long as you stay within those rules. And what's interesting within that improvisation is the particular consciousness or sense of that melody continues to come across.
And you mentioned that at the lunch, how that breaks down and things, and how it can be, like you said, improvisational. I get that correct pronunciation. And again, I don't want to be scatterbrained here, but when you look at this type of music that you're involved in, and then look at your holistic natural medicine approach, and health in general. And I think I shared with you at the lunch that a lot of folks didn't know this, but racehorses and major professional animals like that actually go to bed at night, sleep, or wake up in the morning to music, a variety of different types of music.
Right. And
the ocean's one of the ingredients, and we're right next to that here. In that, over in Del Mar, they actually take the horses out, and any injuries they've incurred, they do it in the salt water. They take care of it. So there's a connection there. But with your step into this industry that you're in, as the professional that you are, making foods and testing people's blood and knowing what blood type they are, you draw up the foods they should eat for their health. I'd like you to impart on that a little too. Yeah,
one of the things that I am very interested in, and I recommend people to look into, is the blood type diet. Usually people will say, well, I'll contact my doctor for the blood type, but usually it's not kept in the doctor's office. So I send people out for a blood type test. Research has shown that different blood types will have different reactions to foods in the blood, that there's a coagulation process that can occur in the blood. And it's kind of like an allergic reaction. And so what I found, and what a lot of people have found, is that when people follow the blood type diet, they have less allergies and less other types of physical problems. They have more energy, and they feel more vitality from their food. And so that's one of the nutritional focuses that it's not the only nutritional focus that I work with people, but it's one of the ones that I encourage people to get involved with. There can be differences of types of foods that you may have throughout the seasons. For example, in the summer when it's warm or hot, not this past summer, but if you're in a hot environment, it's better to eat foods that are cooler in nature, like more fruits and vegetables. In the wintertime, it's better to eat vegetables or foods that are more warm in nature, like animal proteins, root vegetables, ginger, garlic. The ginger and garlic, for example, are very warming foods. In the summertime, if you eat those things, you'll feel too hot and you feel very uncomfortable. So that's another aspect of nutrition that I work with.
I'm always fascinated over these types of things, Dr. Fred. And when I think of the periods of the year here in this state, we don't really have the seasons as such like you do back where you probably grew up in other areas. But normally around later spring, early summer in this area, you see a lot of people with watermelons and fruits of that type, cherries. And of course, we're in a farming area too, so you can go to these stands and get things. When you look at what you're doing with the foods that you make for people, in addition to what you're recommending that they eat based upon their blood type and the condition they're in, this is something you studied and researched and did under your mentors, right?
That's right. Yeah, especially herbal medicine, food and nutrition. Yes, and I'll tie back to one of the points you were making earlier. At the college that I went to at the University of the Pacific, one of the subjects of focus was social change, and so I realized, with this interest in alternative medicine at that time, that was my way of sort of moving forward with social change. In other words, in a sense, that's sort of where I've dedicated my life, is recognizing that these natural approaches to medicine were important. I had a tremendous curiosity about them. I realized that one of the problems in health is just not even knowing how your body functions, because I realized...
You learned how to read the body.
Well, but even for myself personally, I didn't, I realized I had a lot of fear about my body because I simply didn't even understand, how it worked. So first, for me to find out more about how the body worked, I realized, started to allay the fears, my own personal fears.
Right.
And then from that, I began to realize the need to teach and I gave a lot of workshops in the LA area as part of a way of creating this change in the community to get people to see that alternative medicine was something that, and this is back in the late 70s, early 80s.
When you look at what you do as a living and the people, and you have a passion for it, it just emanates out of you that you have a passion for helping people. And that's what this community needs to know, is there's someone out there. I mean, I know the doctors I go to, and I have a chiropractor who's been at it for 40 years, has helped a lot of people, and he does the natural things, ironically. And when I met you, I was strictly through an interview here in this station at one time, but now I've gotten to know you more in depth, especially through that lunch, the things that you shared with me about your experiences in your life, especially on the Oriental side. But it's been a benefit to you, and it's going to be a benefit to everybody in Ventura County. And so right now, we're going to do it a little later on to reestablish it, but you do have a website, do you not?
Yeah, I have a website. It's fredsoffice.com, and you want my address as well, or just the website?
Where your practice is?
It's on Market Street,
yes,
4482 Market, Suite 403. And my phone number is 654-8776.
And you go by appointment pretty much?
Yes. Now, one of the things that I try to encourage people to realize is that not one doctor can do everything. So look at me as maybe a member of your team. It's not either or. It's helpful to have reviews by physicians, have physicals. But there are other areas that need to be filled in, that a physician may not have time for, or interest for, or simply may not be able to do it. And that's where practitioners like myself come in.
Do you have a favorite part of your practice? I mean, all of us do at some point.
I really like doing non-force alignment technique on people. It combines acupressure with simple compression techniques. It's a way of realigning the back. There's no cracking involved. There's no force involved. Acupressure, there's a type of acupressure called shiatsu, which is a double thumb pressure technique along each side of the spine. And that can help to loosen a lot of tightness along the spinal vertebrae. And I love doing that kind of work on people. It's
one of the main goals is to get people centered.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been told this, that the person's center, I mean, there's used words like karma, and you know, there's a variety of different energy fields in a person's body. These are things you were taught and explained to when you were coming through your learning and your processes?
Definitely. I mean, acupuncture really is a whole system of understanding how energy works in the body, both how we're affected by outside energy as well as how to nurture the energy within and balance it at the different levels of the being. And for example, the kidney reproductive energy needs to be nurtured for longevity. And now we realize, with all the interest in bioidentical hormones or even hormone therapy in general, that this sort of verifies the traditional Chinese approach, which used herbals to keep the generative system in shape and in balance as people age.
Well, as an example, my being a patient, I got to tell you, I was very much taken after you did what you did to me. And it started off with some small things, but then you actually made some special ingredients, foods for me. And I know what I was going through at that time. It helped alleviate a lot of it. In fact, I was fighting, I think if I remember right at that time, several months ago, I actually was fighting something coming on, and I didn't even know what it basically was. And I read my body pretty well, I thought. But with you helped me understand even further, which, you know, it meant a lot.
It's amazing sometimes that, you know, just simple foods or deficiencies, nutritional deficiencies, can make a huge difference. You know, one of the books I've been reading recently, which I've known of this book, I've read parts of it a few years back, and I talk about it, but I've never read it completely until this weekend. I'm really going into it. It's called The Body's Many Cries for Water. And usually I'm very good with language, but this person's last name I cannot pronounce. But he was from Iran originally. He was going to be executed.
Oh, wow.
Somehow he managed not to get executed. And he did a whole study on the use, he discovered by accident the use of water for peptic ulcer. And he since has discovered and reveals the body physiology in his book that a lot of physical conditions are caused by dehydration. And it's a phenomenal discovery.
Which is hence why a lot of doctors say drink so much water over a period of time.
And what's interesting,
what is it, 8 glasses? Is that correct?
Yeah, at least 6 to 8. But what's interesting is that our taste buds are actually suppressed. You know, the thirst response is suppressed for a lot of people. And I've even noticed it for myself that, and I'm actually currently on this program where my taste buds are being, you know, reawakened, and I'm realizing, you know, that I need to drink more water. And you go through this for a while until your body starts to stabilize, and a lot of physical conditions, you know, can be eliminated by that. I've had some patients that I've told them just to drink more water, and their headaches will start going away, you know, or other things. So it's really, really important.
Would it also have to do with the environment? I mean, you think of Ventura County, we're near the ocean, we're near the mountains, we're kind of in a nice center, and there's a lot of folks moving in now. But when you go to various other areas, there's things start happening to that person.
Well, people are, you know, they drink a lot of coffee, tea, they drink a lot of drinks, sodas, smoke cigarettes. All these things actually have effect of dehydrating the body. They don't necessarily hydrate. And so we've gotten, you know, a lot of people have gotten accustomed to this, but they don't really drink that much water. And it's really the direct drinking of water that makes a difference. So as much as I've done all these studies, you know, I find something new that's very essential like this, you know, I want to master it, I want to get clear about it, and I want to share it with my patients.
That's a good thing. That's what's special about you. There's a reputation being put on you, so to speak, that I'd like to push too, and that is the fact
well, if I can,
who you are has a lot to do with what you do.
Well, thank you, thank you.
It's like being the musician that you are. That ties into who you are as a doctor, as the practitioner that you are and what you do.
Well, if I interrupt you for a second, I mean, one of the things that was such an important thing for me to realize, that there are certain aspects of nutrition that are so important for people. They can be taking herbal formulas all day, and they're not going to be helped by it because there's certain nutrients that they need. And so there's, it was very important for me to realize that there is this strong point and drop off with every modality, and it's very important to be able to see that and understand it so that we can be effectively helping people.
Mm-hmm. You're one of a kind within Ventura County. Do you have any knowledge of anyone out there like yourself practicing these same things here?
I don't know of anybody. I mean, one of the things that I do that's unique is I put together my own herbal formulas.
Uh-huh.
And
which I alluded to early on, but let's go ahead and get to that.
And some of those I received from my teacher, and actually since 1989 I've been producing most of the herbal formulas in my practice, so I know what goes into them, how they work, the quality, and so forth. And I like that. There's not any guessing to it. There's no side effects most of the time because they're prescribed correctly. But I really like the idea of just sourcing the herbs and seeing how they smell and how they look, and they're fresh. And
our five senses are very important, aren't they?
Yes, and I just like it. I like being able to do that. That's something that excites me.
Just a little bit left in the show. So what I want to touch upon right now would be for you to give out. I'm at a loss for words today. Can you imagine that? Somebody broadcasting for as long as I've been being at a loss for words. Your web address?
Okay, fredsoffice.com. It's FREDS office.com.
Okay, and that's all lowercase?
All lowercase, and it has a lot of information about my practice and different modalities that I use.
The office address?
4482 Market Street, Suite 403, Ventura 93003.
Okay, and then your phone number?
It's 654-8776.
Is there more than one? You just have the
That's
one
the
number?
main one.
That's the main
That's the one. Yeah.
Now, since we talked about appointments, we'll close out with this. Appointments for you are, for the most part, Monday through Friday?
Actually,
do you do working weekends at all?
Actually, Tuesday to Saturday.
Oh, Tuesday through Saturday.
Yeah, I take off Sunday and Monday. I take off. And, but I do have some hours on Saturday, and also early evening hours for people that are working or coming a distance.
And that helps them.
Yes.
I'm fascinated over people when a holiday comes along, they close their doors and they're complaining the economy is affecting their business, and then they could be there, but they're not there.
Right.
But you do. You
Saturdays
have
are
after-hour specials for people who have an emergency that they could reach you?
Yes. I mean, I'm always checking my message machine, even on Sunday or Monday. So I always check every hour or so. So if somebody has a problem, I really think it's important to be there for people. That's the other thing. That's really important. Okay.
That's your heart.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for being with me here on this show, which is called OurVentura.com. So, folks, all I got to say is if you don't get to know Fred, you better start to know something.